Okay, so we are live, aren't we?
We are.
Okay,
LinkedIn.
so yeah, so it's still early. We have a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed attendees that we are hoping to see soon, and fellow business enthusiasts.
Yeah.
So welcome to the Revenue Code in 2023, where we are hoping to supercharge your CRM and other tools with the buying committee insights. We are streaming live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube channel of Process Natives. So you're welcome to join on any of those channels and add the comments. We are gathered here today to delve into really dynamic landscape of sales and customer relationship management, and also to see the ever-evolving B2B ecosystem and the management of that ecosystem. So please make sure to introduce yourselves in the comments. Tell us where you're joining from. We will wait a few minutes so that everyone can join who registered. I also want to remind you that you will have a chance to ask questions at the very end of the webinar. So there will be plenty of time to ask questions and to receive answers from both from me, Auxe, and from Ryan. So let's see. Let's wait for a few minutes and see who is joining.
It might be good to just really, in the first minute, talk about like what spurred your idea for this, because you reached out to me to run this.
Yes, definitely. So we are live, and okay. So let's just see if anyone is joining, and would love to hear where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
We joined a bit too early.
Well, I see seven. Looks like there's 7 people in, from what I can see. I'm not
You
sure
can
what you
see
see.
7 people. Okay, so if you are watching us here, please introduce yourselves, and we can't
Yeah.
wait to get to know you, as we will definitely have a really extended Q&A session at the end of this, and we will answer all the questions that you might have. And of course, this is a very complex topic, so there might be many questions, and there are no stupid questions nowadays because the B2B ecosystem is really complex. So please introduce yourselves.
And we can always answer questions after the fact too, either on LinkedIn. I think people will be able to access this
Exactly.
after the fact and drop questions. Happy to do that too if
Yes,
anyone wants to
yes.
add them.
So the recording will be like the replay of this event will be available all the time on both of our profiles. So you can always find it on LinkedIn, on my profile, on Ryan's profile. You will also be able to see that on YouTube channel called Process Natives. So don't worry, you will not miss anything. But again, if you really want to receive specific answers, you can always wait till the end and we will answer them. Okay, so let's just start. And please keep introducing yourselves. We want it to be as engaging as it can be for you guys. So my name is Auxe. I am business process and revenue automation consultant. For the last 7 thrilling years of my career that I love so much, I have been on global mission to turbocharge business companies' workflows. So to simplify that, just picture this. CRM configuration, tech stack alignment for a new startup team of 10 people who just are missing several productivity hacks, or Operations moved out for 14 departments, all powered by mind-blowing 2,500 automations in just a few months. But here's the twist. As I delved into the depths of B2B, specifically sales, because my career took me to really depths into the businesses that were dealing with B2B sales, a puzzle piece was missing. So that was the seamless connection between sales process and the buyer's journey. So that's where the plot thickens. Call me a true workaholic. I couldn't figure it out all myself. So I was on a lookout for a collaborator with a true genius mind. And while being on LinkedIn, I see there's Ryan. I thought he's just, too genius to connect. He might be too busy, but I got a reply, and that's how the magic started. So let me introduce the distinguished speaker, Ryan Ferguson. Yes, a lot of podcasts are hunting him, so we are really glad to see him. And his career is definitely defined with innovation and expertise. And he has reshaped so many B2B businesses' approach to sales. He allowed, with his clarity, all those sales teams to understand complex concepts and to explain how to approach those buyers. So get ready to be inspired by Ryan. Ryan, tell us more about your journey, and we're really glad to hear from you.
Well, thank you. It's very kind. I don't know if my wife would call me a genius, but I appreciate the sentiment. I've been in B2B.
Well, that comes from you. So that comes, from what I saw in your insights from the research. It's
very
really
kind.
hard to find nowadays people who are really put so much thought into this. So when I saw your case studies and the work that you are giving to your clients, I was really impressed. So
thank you.
Really...
Well, I'll keep my intro brief so we can get to the good stuff of all those things. So I've been in B2B 20 years, mostly in marketing, but also some business development and sales. I took a quick pause in that, and I actually became an investigative reporter for a few years. It was in TV and radio, which was such a fun job. It was not my calling, so I went back to business. And for the last few years, this has sort of been my specialty is what we really call qualitative research, but really trying to deeply understand how and why people buy things. And then using those insights to really impact a go-to-market strategy. I feel like what I do is there's other people that do it, and I borrow some really experts themselves and really smart people. But I have a process I like to follow, and I think so far it's been pretty strong. So I think we'll dive into that.
It's so important, to have your authentic process, because while you're trying to develop your authentic process, you always develop something new. And you might not even realize that it's so different than what others are doing. And you are literally sitting on the gold mine that you're giving to clients. So that's definitely what I saw in your work. And I really, cannot be more thankful for this partnership and for this opportunity, to collaborate on this event. So let's dive deep now of the value that we are really trying to bring you guys here. Let me simply start with this, that we have 7 major problems of B2B sales process that happens if we don't have the buyer qualitative research, okay? I work, as I mentioned, mainly with B2B companies. And throughout the 7 years that I worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies around the globe, it's Australia, South Korea, Canada, US, Europe, doesn't matter the region, culture doesn't matter too. 90% of those companies I work with create a paradox. So sellers are trying to cut corners and they rush. Interestingly, their buyers say that buying process is very difficult. So you see, even though we are rushing to sell, buyers are trying, to slow it down and to understand what are they buying and how they are buying, and just to understand the services, and all the depths of your products or services that you're selling. So you will see in the webinar why exactly it is difficult for them. And as a productivity coach, automation consultant, I love to cut steps. That's all what I'm trying to do for the companies. But what I realized in my journey is sometimes more steps means less complexity. So as we see, 77% of buyers state that their latest purchase was very difficult or complex. This is definitely not just another statistics that is not happening in your market. You cannot ignore that. A lot of companies and executives that just say that, oh, our service is not that hard to understand. It's simply just not true, because you are just trying to cut the corner. So don't make this mistake. So what specifically has changed in recent years when we talk about expectations from B2B buyers? What do they expect from you? And you need to hear that. If you don't want to listen to the expectations of the buyer process, then you are definitely making a lot of mistakes. I want to remember you this next time you plan out your sales process, that simplifying for yourself does not mean you're simplifying and serving your buyer. I want to repeat that again. When you are simplifying sales process for your team or for yourself, is never means that you're simplifying the process for your buyer. And that is the paradox. So the examples include the personalized attention they're seeking from you. Personalized can mean a lot of things. It does not necessarily mean long meetings. It does not necessarily mean that you should take into account the hobbies that your champion and buying committee has, or specific interesting facts about their career. I do not mean those automated emails that take snippets of information from their profiles and add to those emails. Personalized attention means their specific needs for both the product service and also the needs during the buying process. Another thing is to take into account that they spend more time researching purchases. 77% of the companies are spending more time on research. It means that they are more aware of the mistakes that you're making. They are more aware of what things they could get from other companies, and also such things as detailed return on investment analysis for them is more required during the process in those all long checklists that executives provide to them than it used to be. So these are the critical things to remember. Now, let's talk about how technology meets that B2B buyer process. So let's imagine this scenario that you as a B2B company approach business automation consultant, or you decide to finally configure your B2B sales process tech stack. These questions that you are avoiding are really hindering the perfect configuration of your tech stack and tools enablement for your team. So one of the things that I'm always missing is, what are the buying stages, not selling stages? A lot of companies, when we map out the stages in the pipeline, in the CRM, what they're doing is simply telling me what exactly they will be doing and what they expect to happen. But they never tell me what are the buying stages of your buyer. It doesn't matter which market They can be separated into different pipelines, but these things are always missing. Next is, what is the champion role? Not official position. So it's very easy to just add, official position. What is their role in that buying process? What they exactly will be doing? What things they will be investigating about the solution company is so actively seeking and looking to invest in. Another thing is champion pains, not official responsibilities. What is buying committee structure? So how many people and what specific roles will be included in that buying process? Are we looking at just 2 or 3, or are we looking at even 7 people buying committee? That would change your tech stack and the tools and the CRM configuration a lot. Even the choice of the tools might be different. How evaluations are made, how the vendor scoring are done. Of course, you will never forget about your lead or deal scoring, because a lot of executives that I talk, or revenue operations, or revenue directors, sales managers, business development managers, they always want to see the deal scoring, lead scoring. But what you forget is that you are also aligned with vendor scoring. You are being scored. Another thing is technical and legal approvers. So if we are talking about selling technology, IT solutions, SaaS solutions, and I think that in our audience, we will see many of you guys are specifically in those positions that you are trying to sell quite complex solutions. They are being assessed not just by that champion, as we call, not specific managing department, but also he or she is collaborating with technical and legal approvers. So they go through all these checklists. Finally, technographic data structure. This you will see in this webinar so many different angles. We will look in depth specifically what we mean. Okay, so as I looked at 7 problems of the tech stack configuration, I just want to remind for this interesting graphic that I'm sharing that your deals are living separate life that you don't see. So what you see in your CRM is usually your process, where you are going, but you never see the life of your deals that are living, again, a separate life that you don't see. What I did is I was trying to separate your champion thoughts and what you're doing. So let's imagine this scenario. You are making a contact with a champion, and your champion is thinking about, after all that conversation, is that this conversation was quite difficult for me to understand. That seller was using a bit of too much their technical slang. So they're thinking my role is different than my title. I shouldn't even be in this buying committee. While you are thinking, okay, let's do this solution demo presentation. Then, because their role is a bit different, they're thinking, why is there no self-serve demo where they could educate themselves? Maybe not so fast, maybe a bit slower, where they could explore those different angles that were expected. It could be that you're dealing with someone who is very new in the company and in their role, and you're suddenly attacking them with that demo presentation. So they are already shrinking as a deal in terms of trust and communication quality with you. Now you're waiting for their decision. And what is happening in the company is your champion is thinking, I need to share what I've already been through with my decision makers, how to do it. It was personal demo presentation, maybe there was no recording, there's no way to share that. And instead of addressing this need, you are following up with case study. That is completely irrelevant. And maybe you are checking if case study was clicked with fancy new technology where you can track if your documents were viewed. Good for you. But the thing is that at that stage, there might be a critical moment in that company where no IT, legal, and financial documents were provided for the extra three decision makers. And you don't even know if they were included, you forgot to ask, or you simply don't even know because you didn't do the buyer research that you were supposed to do about your market. Another thing that is happening is that you might be following up with no personalized message. And your champion is talking to a colleague who already found another vendor because you didn't meet all these needs. That vendor is great because they provided all that knowledge to additional buying committee members. And while you're already celebrating, thinking that you didn't receive an answer no, so they might be considering you, they keep opening the case study, so you are almost good to go. But because of no internal buy-in, you are losing your deal. It's simply exploding. So this is happening because of two things. The first thing, you didn't do buyer research. So there was no Ryan in in your research, no genius insights that gives you specific things, specific insights that are usually happening in these companies, and you have zero idea that might even happen. Another thing is you might have ideas that is more complex, but you don't use the right tools and you're not configuring them the right way for you to be really in the moment and to be both proactive and reactive when these things are happening in your champions committee. So that's what we see is usually happening. Now, the first thing that we need to address is how buyer research is done, how that gold that really shows us what is happening in your targeted market companies done, how to do it right, and all these myths. So please, Ryan, tell us what usually is done wrong and
Yeah.
because what I usually do, I used to do, now I just say that the strong way. What I usually do is I tell my clients, I will promise I will look at your target market companies and the most common champions and their sort of roles in the companies and the job descriptions, and that's where we're going to do the data. So please tell me I did good job.
Yeah, well, it's part of it, but I think with the first slide, we'll sort of talk a bit about like why even do it in the first place, which we've talked about. But I want to zoom in on that a little more in the next slide, and I think you're going to progress my slides for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will do that for you. So just please tell me if
Perfect.
it's next slide
Yeah,
or
next slide, please. And everyone, you'll
okay,
notice
next
there's a bit of
slide.
you'll notice that their format's a little different because we married our two slide decks together. So
Yeah.
buyer research, why even do in the first place? A really easy way to think about this is that people don't buy products, they buy progress towards an end state. These are two graphics I borrowed from a really good book called When Coffee and Kale Compete. It's free online. Please download it if you find it. There's a link in the slide deck there. And it's a really great way to visualize what people actually buy, because we often try to sell them feature sets till the end of the day. But that's actually not what people buy. And, if you look at the skateboard example here, there's all these features around what the skateboard has, but what the person wants to do is just actually have a really good kickflip, because that's the end state they want to get to. In the B2B world, it's the same process. We don't buy the features, we buy the transition the features allow us. And they also want to understand, they buy the context of how this solution or whatever approach they're looking at evaluating, whether it's indirect or direct competitors, how it impacts their business model. So those are the key things that people tend to look for. And the last thing I'll say is solutions don't necessarily fit in of themselves. They actually fit in a larger process, because most businesses are large processes to help drive revenue for them. A good example is, we're talking about automation, a CRM. A CRM is not the marketing or sales process. It's actually part of it, right? So it's operations. So you have to understand, like, how does your tool or solution fit inside the business? Because if you understand that process and how they're trying to improve that process, that's a first step to buyer research. You can go to the next slide. Because if you don't understand that process and how and why they're trying to improve that process and how they approach trying to find solutions to improve that process, you're not going to influence their decision-making process. Because here's the reality: is these solutions that we sell to buyers, they might be aware of them weeks, months, or years before they're ready to buy. I've talked to people that are years. They know about a solution they might want to buy, but they haven't bought it. Well, why? What's the reason for that? What's happening in their business? What is eventually creating the tipping of the scales that they prioritize budget and time to finding a solution? If you don't understand this process of how this all unfolds, you're not going to influence this process. But yet what we do, as you can see in this graphic that I've created, we spend most of our time and energy on that high intent, end of the deal cycle. Whereas people start making decisions about products like yours or similar to yours long before they get to a sales team. But if you don't know what that journey is, how do you know how to influence it? Buyer research gets you that journey. So if you want to go to the next slide. Sorry, my daughter's turning around my feet. I want to talk a bit about the myths of buyer research. Because people often think, okay, well, if I'm going to do my own buyer research, what does that look like? I think I know what that is. Here's some of the myths of like what buyer research is and is not, or what people say to me in the course of my work. First is that we need experience doing it, and that's not true. Anyone can do this work. I do it as a professional. There's probably things that I will do that a first timer does not do, but as long as you have a process or some type of format to follow, and you keep things simple, you will find a way to get this done. Biased. The right systems or process. Just 1 second. Rory, Daddy's just in a meeting. Can I talk to you in a little bit? Can you go with your brother, please? No, I want you to go see your brother, okay? Thank you, okay? I know. Well, you can do that another time. I'm just on a meeting right now, okay? I know. I'll come find you in a few minutes, okay? We'll change the show, okay? Okay, I'll see you in a few minutes. Sorry.
That was a great negotiation tactic.
Thank you. Biased. We're all biased to a certain extent. So often we don't do research. We don't do research because we're going to be biased. Well, that's normal for anybody. Humans are naturally biased, but with the right process and systems, you can actually account for these things. We don't want to bother customers. This is one of the biggest myths I hear. I've had an exchange on LinkedIn this morning in this context. You said it yourself, Alex, like customers want a better experience. You saw the data. I hear time and time again, buyers telling me how they want the buying experience to be better. And here's all the insights they give me on how to do that for my clients. They want to give you this information. You're not going to bother them.
We always want to talk about what we want, you can always, make someone open up if you really show that you care what they want. So I don't think that can be a problem in such a great myth, that is bothering. It's not about filling a form. It's an actual conversation with a human being.
Correct.
That always feels just good.
About how you make their experience better. People always want to talk about that. Sales already talks to customers. That's true, but they only see a fraction of the journey. If you remember that graphic I showed you, they're at the end of the deal, right? When intent is high and they're talking about specificities of maybe onboarding or implementation or pricing. What you don't get in a sales call is why they came to you in the first place and what was happening in the business when that trigger moment happened months, maybe years earlier. They have a very strong contextual relationship with customers, sales teams, so they don't see the whole journey. And we already know our buyers are customers. It's similar to that last point, but I hear this from product people, executives, founders. But when you're in the day-to-day business, you're in the operations side, your judgment gets clouded around what buyers are actually coming to you for and how they make decisions, because you only see snippets of that part. You said it yourself, the deals have a life of their own. So how do you get at what that life looks like outside of the company? So those are the myths that we see. One of the main myths, though, the next slide is, well, we do research. Look at my market research. Great, love it. That's important, but that's not buyer research. Market is the macro. It's a high level. It's a generalization of a group of buyers. You'll see these things in Gartner. You had stats from Gartner yourself, right, in the first few slides. McKinsey, Harvard Business Review, things broken up by vertical or generic job description. That's fine as a way to sort of where do I throw the dart, right? Or where do I get started? But these are usually informal surveys of a small sample size that lack that context, that specificity of a job that a person wants to get done in their business, that transition they want to make, and the personalization around their responsibilities and their roles. You won't get that in market research. You only get that in buyer research. So if you look at the next slide, buyer research is really the micro. It's an in-depth look. I'm getting all these insights about a best fit buyer, their business model, their key challenges, the firmographics, the psychographics, and it's qualitative data, not the quantitative side that you see in surveys. It's me having conversations, but a structured conversation with a rigor around it, because there's specific things that I want to try and understand. That's the difference between the two. You need both, but most companies only do market research and they conflate the two. So what is a buyer research interview? If you go to the next slide, this is how I define it. It's a friendly conversation that confirms either existing or confirms or gets rid of existing assumptions. And it's not a friendly. Messed up my slide there. Oh, sorry. Here's what it's not: a friendly conversation, confirming existing assumptions, and opinions and hot takes. I hear that all the time. That's people think that it is, and it's not. It's an investigation grounded in a research objective, focusing on collecting behaviors, actions, and statements of facts. So when you go back to looking at that life of a deal slide you had, you're trying to understand, like, systematically, how are they moving from each of these stages? What is the information they need? How do they talk to each other? What do they want to see? What do they not want to see? What is relevant to them? What is credible to them? And what are the actions they took through each of these stages and why? If I just have a friendly conversation, which is what it should feel like, but if I just have that, I'm not going to get insights that actually move the needle in my business and that I can apply into all my marketing, sales, actions, and automations. So
you need to dig much deeper. You need to dig much deeper, because if it's just a friendly conversation, then you will not get to know, like, really their pains, because, as I mentioned, it can be a new person and they're just worried about their position in the company and what others are thinking and what they should provide. Because a lot of, especially my clients, just last week I was talking to one of the big clients from the USA, and it's a big company, 500 employees, and they had zero idea like what struggles their champions are going through. And until one of them just suddenly screamed out, "Listen, I have so much pressure from these three departments." Like, what? Like, are they involved? Well, were you surprised? So this is definitely
it's
this
very
investigation.
Common. Yeah. And it's very common. Most B2B companies have those surface level insights, and those work for a little while in the beginning. But as you're maturing as an organization, trying to grow revenue, that's not going to help you land deals and acquire net new customers, new logos. It'll have diminishing returns. So when we look at a buyer research interview, I sort of break it down into 4 parts. The the 4 parts on the next slide are setting objectives, who to interview, how to find them, and conducting them. For the sake of our discussion today, I'm actually only going to cover 1 and 2. I write a lot about 3 and 4, either on LinkedIn, on my website. I have a guide people can go through. It's sort of like a self-tutorial if they're interested in that. And that really will dive into 3 and 4. But for today, I'm focusing on 1 and 2. So setting objectives is the next slide. And this is really what makes or breaks the beginning when you set research objectives. So if you want to go to the next slide, it'll walk you through a little bit of that. What I tell people is you have to use a problem statement as a guide, something that you feel you want to fix in the business, usually a gap in knowledge or a KPI you have to hit, an OKR. Maybe they were one of the things I often say is like key business events like acquisitions or and you want to grow that business, new product lines, whatever, new features. You have to have something that defining what you're trying to learn and why. And then the next part of it is don't list out like a list of questions not next slide, last slide, but the next part of that slide. Don't list out a series of questions. What you want to understand is within that objective, you focus on topics, themes, and processes. So, a topic could be I'm going to show some examples from my work. Challenges that IT managers have in managing the life cycle of physical devices. That could be a topic. Themes could be, what are the scope of these challenges and what's causing them in your business and why is it exist in your business model? And a process could be, how are you managing the life cycle? Show me what you're doing, right? What is every step from A to Z? These are all contextual things that you want to understand about this specific business because your hypothesis is an objective is that, okay, we want to understand this in the context of the themes, topics, and processes to inform doing X in the business, whatever that is. So if you show the next slide, I'll show you what those can look like. Bad examples of this I've seen are often solicitation objectives. It's really like research, sales calls disguised as a research, or people trying to understand how they'll just sell a new thing. So these are actually 2 objectives that clients came to me with. Will pharmaceutical companies pay for a digital health product consultant, or will IT leaders use software for managing mobile devices? The problem is you're putting the cart before the horse here. You don't know if any of this is true, right? And it's going to color your research. It's going to bias your research. So if you flip it around, how are pharma companies developing and launching digital products? If you understand that process and the challenges and themes within that, then you'll understand how a healthcare product consultant come in and position itself, market itself, and sell itself. How are IT teams managing the physical life cycle of mobile devices? Great. If I know all the challenges in that, I can start to impact the decision at that earlier stage that we highlighted, because they're going to start thinking of those problems and how to improve that process. They might not choose your product yet, but you know how to influence that decision-making process earlier on. So here's the next slide is going to show you how that looks like in practice for one of my clients. We have a research objective that's high level. X is looking to understand and determine an ideal client profile for its mobile device asset management software to inform the beginning of a go-to-market strategy. Very specific objective. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to interview 7 individuals that are an IT manager at a senior director level with a minimum of this many devices in circulation. Right? We're getting really qualified. We're really narrowing down who we want to talk to. And we're going to understand the priorities and anxieties, their challenges, the amount of operational time it takes to maintain their current process. If they don't do something, what's the impact? How has hybrid affected any of this? That's just very contextual to what they want to do, which is managing devices in a hybrid work environment. How they research, how they evaluate. So that's your marketing, that's your sales, that's how do they evaluate vendors, right? How do they score vendors? Use the language you used. And what are the activities that build trust and credibility? And where do they consume content? That's a lot to understand, but that's going to drive your deal flow when you really look at what's beneath that. So that's really key, is understanding what are the objectives and the things we want to learn. So once you have that, then you got to figure out who you're going to interview, which is the next slide. And how I give people context around this, figure out the type of business, the person within the business, and they need to fit your research objectives. So a way to think about this in the next slide is comparing apples to apples. A bad example would be if I'm going to research and talk to a SaaS DevOps lead that oversees the processes of 100 engineers, and then I go and compare their data against an hospital IT director that oversees 5 engineers, those business models are dramatically different, right? And the pains and challenges they have can be dramatically different. So why does that matter? Because if you start using both those, mix and match those two pieces of insights, you might start investing in activities in marketing and sales that go nowhere because they're actually not, one of those is not your best fit client. The next example would be something that's a better way to approach it. That DevOps lead at 100 engineers, but then a SaaS CTO that oversees 20 engineers. They're still not perfect, but you're in a better ballpark of trying to understand who you're going to talk to. Because if you rely on that market research, you might just go talk to IT managers across all verticals and sections. But that's not how, that's not going to give you any benefit for how you go to market, because not all those people are going to be a good, strong fit customer for you. And I think that's the end of my slides. Is that the end of my slides?
Perfect. Yes, yeah. It is. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
So that definitely demonstrates us that is not just research, yes, because we use research just too much. It's literally investigation. Even the objectives, my guess is that you are really helping your clients to also to define those objectives. Because
Absolutely.
I don't think that they, yeah, exactly. So they come to you and they say that we just want to know if they're going to buy, and you then completely transform their mindset, how they should approach and set those objectives, and then it becomes investigation. Yeah. So let's look, I mean, in all this investigation, so many layers that you showed in the example, there's so many insights we can go through. We can have like 10-hour stream or 24-hour stream, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, you know, like when I saw the research that you provide, insights, you know, documents that you provide to your clients, that's for sure. But our goal today is just to give you at least, you know, 4 angles that must find place in your daily selling. Again, these are just examples. So what we will be looking at is champion psychology, buying behavior, decision-making, and technographics. And that's already will cover a lot of things. So let's start first with champion psychology. When we mean champion psychology, it's someone who initiated the contact with your company, or you sort of grabbed their attention because they had a high intent and they are really in that supportive role where they are trying to realize, is this a good fit for my company? And they're the most sort of in the supporting role for your sales reps. So we will be looking at their roles, responsibilities, pains, and anxieties. So let's talk about it more. What is it, bias, roles, responsibilities, and how they're usually different than that famous job description that we talked about previously?
Yeah, because it's not. A job description is just a high level thing. And we'll use that sometimes to target an outbound. We'll use that as a way to sort of frame our mindset around who these people are. But that's not an in-depth look at like what they care about. And to take it further, well, with my example before about who you talk to, the roles and responsibilities of an IT director at a hospital are going to be dramatic than the roles and responsibilities of an IT director at a software company, right? So you can't use that high level. What you need to understand is what are the specific things they focus on and where do they prioritize their time in the business? You won't glean that from a job description, you know, because where they prioritize their time, and specifically in the context of the solution that you help provide, then you're going to understand like how you're going to help influence their decision-making process towards your solution and what their ideal outcomes are, either using your solution or not. You even want to, I even like to understand like team size and structure, budgetary constraints, how they make decisions as a team, you know, how they set objectives and KPIs. It's like that where, what stresses them out, what do they want to get to that they can't get to because of things that are getting in the way. It's really much like a day in the life is how I framed it here. Because if you get as much context around all the hows and whys, all these firmographics, psychographics, and insights, they're going to live in your CRM and your activities so that you can start influencing that decision and use that to your advantage to build credibility and trust with these buyers. So that's the first slide. I think the next slide is what it looks like for all this in action. So you can see this from two products that I ran, a very executive summary level of it. I usually break this out a bit more in my work, but as a way to sort of communicate and facilitate and what this would look like, or what the answers and the insights are across the company. I'll have like roles and teams and their priorities. The first one was for a company out of Israel that dealt with that was exploring chargeback software. What are the priorities? What do the teams look like, and how are they structured, and why, and what do they focus on? The second one was for the example I gave you earlier around like a digital healthcare consultant. We spoke to directors or senior managers that deal with digital healthcare products in pharmaceutical companies. And these are the buckets of their responsibilities. They get new products into the business. They either help develop new technologies or new health products for clinical trials, and they help work on digital health products that the consumer that might be buying. And you can see how I've laid out really quickly what they focus on in the context of the solution. That's much different than a job description that you'll see around, I do X in my role. I'm not sure. I can't remember what the next slide is. Is it me?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
But that pains and anxieties. That's you.
So pains and anxieties. Blockers are how I describe these are blockers or fears or things that just get in the way of all those responsibilities and priorities, right? And I want to focus on, okay, if we remove X or we did X, what's going to happen? Like what was happening before X? And if you don't achieve X, what happens? And as you've used X, what has happened, right? So one example from my work here, which was a key one with that chart company of Israel, a key anxiety was that customer success teams were getting saddled with chargeback processes and a lot of the manual work that comes with that. And they expressed all sorts of concerns, like they don't have the experience, it's taking up all their bandwidth, they can't focus on their core responsibilities, which is, servicing customers. So if you know all these things and you start to have discovery calls or build your marketing materials, you can add extra value and credibility in being the person that presents these solutions to these people. That's the key part of understanding pains and anxieties.
Okay. So when I looked at what Ryan usually gives our client, those clear responsibilities, anxieties, I was thinking how to actually put that into the daily seller's life. What is that one deal? Like, what are these elements that I could extract if Ryan is working the client and they just come to me and say, listen, that's the insights document. And I just dig deep and I try to sort of form all that tools and tactics strategy. So that was the graphic that I came up with. We need clear responsibilities. We need to see anxieties. We need to always have them in front of us as sellers in daily life. We need personalized communication because we already understand that these are the people working with a lot of different responsibilities, and suddenly a new project of buying a solution comes in where expectations are coming from different departments, from the new colleagues, from the colleagues that are trying to build relationships. So we want it to be as smooth as possible. We want to show the impact. As Ryan showed, they always are looking for the impact specifically for their business and the impact to demonstrate other businesses aside. Then we also need the mutual action plan because we need to track what is happening inside. As I showed previously with that graphic with exploding bomb, we don't want exploding bomb. We want to be on track. That is mutual action plan. And timely insights means that we need those updates timely. We need to be both proactive, but we need to be able to react on time. So all of this can be translated into specific tech stack setup. This is just example, yes. I do not represent Pipedrive or Humantic or Enable Us. Again, I want to repeat that there are so many variations available based on the CRM you use, on the budget you have, but we want to show that the buyer research and that investigation has a place in your daily life, in your choices of the tools that you use and how you perform your work as a seller. So the first example is the clear responsibilities and anxieties in Pipedrive. So what I want to do is I want to first show you this example. So this is a Pipedrive setup. This is a pipeline, and many of you use CRM, so you know that most CRMs has pipeline. And as an example, I will be a seller selling to Ryan, and let's look at how these specific responsibilities and anxieties should find place in your CRM. So I created Ryan as a buyer for the solution. And that's where I added champion responsibilities and champion anxieties. I want to remind again, and we talked about it already, about the job descriptions and titles. This is separate. Yes, the champion responsibilities and their title are two separate things that should find place in your B2B CRM configuration. So these are the examples that I added, champion responsibilities. If Ryan is my champion that I am trying to sell CRM solution to, what specific things his company expects him to do? Is it the mutual action plan? Does he need to collaborate with IT and legal team? Ryan told me yes. That's great. I asked him this question just because I see it already added right here, which was based on the research done previously. Yes, so these are the things that usually are very hard to come up unless you have that specific target market buyer research investigation done for you that can be then added as options for the sales reps. And then they know what to ask, how to ask, and what these things are, okay? So I am choosing the right things, and then I know I can actually collaborate with Ryan, and it's much bigger chance for me to win this deal. Now, let's look at another thing is personality assessment AI. So personalized communication can have many different tools, as we know. There's so many things how you can personalize communication, but what I really like using is Humantic AI. And if we look at Humantic AI, it allows us to analyze that personality and shows us exactly what type of personality we're dealing with. If you have an email text that you are planning to send, it can personalize for that specific personality. So this is something that I've been playing with for the last few years. I really like using it. It always gives me surprises. So I guess it depends on how you analyze everyone, but it really gave me some interesting insights about people. Now, the mutual action plan. Again, there are many tools. This time I am looking at specifically Enable Us by Mindtickle. And this is how our mutual plan would look like. So mutual action plan is done on digital sales room. If you don't know what digital sales room is, simply a landing page that you can share with your buyer and provide them mutual action plan where you can assign them specific tasks. You can also share a video. So let's imagine I'm Process Native CEO. I'm selling to Content Live to Ryan. So this is our digital sales room. We have a mutual action plan. And another thing that Ryan told me, he also needs a return on investment analysis. So what I did is I used Involve Me tool to create return on investment calculator. And what I did is I added it to my mutual action plan digital sales room. If he clicks right here, he can do that specific calculation. He can just play with that calculator. The calculation will be provided to him. Maybe my Calendly will be seen or any other additional information. So that's how very specific insights that are coming from buyer research are being transformed into shareable content that shows support for the buyer. What I'm doing is, again, forget the tools, forget everything. What you are seeing here, it's all about being supportive. Ryan told me he really needs to calculate return on investment very fast. What I do is I simply create easy to use, drag and click calculate, no add email, nothing. Just simply play with this calculator. Yes, I can make it more complex, but this is very easy. I add it inside this room. I know if Ryan visited this room. I know if he read the specific case study that he requested related to his market. I also know if he watched my intro video, he can easily book a demo with me. I also provide additional information. And basically, what happens is we have a very aligned collaboration. So, what I want to really emphasize is that these tools support your buyer and allows collaboration to happen. So these are the critical things that I want you to understand. Now, what about the technographics that we mentioned before? So we talked about the champion psychology. This is very important. Let's talk about the technographics. I think it's all about angles and angles and angles, because most sales reps and account executives that I always create data model for, they only ask about competitors. They always care that sales reps just pose that question: what are the competitors that you are using, or maybe you are now investigating, so they might be ready, to throw some dirt at them. That's the only question usually around the technographics. But that is definitely not true. So please, Ryan, tell us more. What are we missing? Is it just the competitors we should care about? Or is there something else?
Yeah, indirect competitors, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing I think people often don't realize when you're, again, you're in the mix of a business, you can't see the forest for the trees, is that people compare approaches. They don't often compare direct competitors. They compare indirect competitors and other ways to do things. There's a reason why most people still use spreadsheets as their CRM, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. What is it and why? So the competitors are one thing, indirect competitors, that process people use and like how they're approaching different things, because those are competitors to you. But I also like to understand, what tools they're using in their tech stack, in addition to help you. Like what are we connecting with? We might already know that, but like what other things are they using in regards to their workflow? How are they achieving success with that? Why are they using those and not others? Because that opens the door for partnerships opens a door for other integrations. There's all these various things that you'll understand when you're working through tech stacks. So I think it's really important to understand those things.
Okay, so when it comes to the full technographic picture, that additional ideas that I hope that you will find value in, definitely investigate potential conflicts. Because I think that a lot of tech stack is being sold and a lot of SaaS software is being sold without looking at overlapping features and then just simply losing clients in a month or two. Look at the whole tech stack monthly budget. Explore if there are overlapping features or potential conflicts with that so that you can maybe sort of fit into their monthly budget. What are the contract terms of the competitor? So this is such an obvious question to ask, but a lot of companies are simply missing that. Because I don't know why, but they feel that if there's a competitor and that the one that is really hard to beat, they don't care about the contract terms. Oh, we just lost that. I'm like, wait, well, what about the contract terms? Like, how hard it's usually to beat? So just recently, I worked with a client from Norway, and just because they started exploring this, they managed to win over several clients just in a month. And these are very, big deal clients from the competitor just because they looked at the contract terms. So this was incredible. Who is responsible for managing tech stack? So your champion might be just buying, but they are not even touching the service or the tool that you are selling. It's very important to involve that person who will be managing, because sometimes, even in my case, I am automation consultant, so I am recommending tools, and sometimes someone who is involved me and investigating all those solutions, they're not even using those tools daily. And I ask them, okay, so who is going to be responsible for actually managing and maybe training employees in the future? And then I see those scared eyes, and they say, oh, it's John. And then John looks at me scared, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's how everything shifts so quickly, and new issues appear. So what are the data sharing and data flow challenges in your tech stack at the moment? Also, another great question. How often do you change your tools in that category? So I don't know how many of you guys are selling SaaS or technology tools, but a big red flag, for me, is someone who is just changing them every 3-4 months. So I know it can be very challenging client, very challenging lead. And that is a question that I would also include into my CRM. So if we quickly just look about how it should look like into your CRM, again, let's go back to Pipedrive. That's where I would add them at deal level. Whole tech stack budget, what are the contract terms of the competitor, just few options locked in, flexible or not sure, just to see if those questions are being answered or not, who is responsible for daily management of tech stack. Again, options, our champion, participant in the deal, not sure. If you're not sure, that should be a red flag. These red flags can be automated. As I said, these questions should have a place in the data model in your CRM. Now, let's talk about the final part, which is not the final part, but the final part, buying behavior. We also have decision-making to talk about. Let's talk about buying behavior. And by that, we mean triggers, objections, and content. So that's very interesting, yes, because buying behavior, there's sort of different dimensions: triggers, events, objections, and also where the content is in. Because I think we will have a lot of marketing enthusiasts and content enthusiasts listening to this and just waiting for that word content.
Yeah. Because, this is different than the responsibilities and pains, where this is the start of, this would be after when they start to prioritize something, and then what is the process they go through. So buying triggers are often either something specific or a culmination of a bunch of challenges they're facing in the business. So, and what is the catalyst for them deciding, okay, we're going to prioritize time and budget to actually go and find a solution. So this is from one of my projects I mentioned a few times, where they were talking about chargebacks. What was really happening with these customers is that I mentioned customer success teams were getting saddled with the process of managing chargebacks. And for people who aren't familiar with that, that's really just how you dispute charges in an e-commerce environment, right? If I'm a buyer and I don't want to pay for this anymore, I can dispute it, and it's called a chargeback. Now, sometimes people use this through fraud as a way for creating fraudulent activities, or they'll use this in a fraudulent way. What was happening with these larger scale companies is that they're building entire teams to deal with chargebacks through their customer success teams, headcount, processes, what have you. And they felt like they didn't know how to do it, didn't have time for it, and they were just becoming unmanageable. And it was taking them away from their core products and core identities of managing customers. So this catalyzed a trigger for them to go and look for a solution, but anything that was out there was not fitting the bill for them. You can see some of what these competitors and solutions were. So they started the search. That's what a trigger is. It's an event or a culmination of things that actually starts the process. And if you go to the next slide, we'll then want to know what is this process they went through for finding a solution? How did they evaluate and put a short list together, right? Where did they go? Who did they talk to? What information did they care about? What was credible? What wasn't credible? What is the information they need to actually pick A over B? If you understand this process, then you understand how to start mapping out your marketing and sales journey, and how to support all the information you need. That either you're doing it automatically, or you're doing it manually. So if you go to the next slide, sorry, just 1 sec. I'm in a meeting right now. Okay, buddy, can't help you right now. Okay, I'll come talk to you in a few minutes. No, I can't. I'll come talk to you in a few minutes. Okay. Thanks, buddy. So if you talk about how they evaluate solutions, school's almost here. I can't wait. If you look at how this looks in practice, this would be for one of my examples of vendors looking at that IT product I talked about. So what they do is they start with peers, and then various solutions in the market. They can be peers working in similar verticals, or different colleagues in their org, right? That happens too in larger companies. They go across to different teams and sections and peers. Their goal is to take a pulse of preliminary options. Sometimes they mention and also seek they seek the opinion of existing vendors. So that's where your tech stack comes in. Maybe their partners in these tech stacks, they're asking for solutions like yours. They're asking for recommendations, right? After this step, maybe they'll seek out some reviews. They'll go to maybe communities. Maybe they'll go to Reddit. They'll look at some analysts' reports. And then what they're trying to understand are all these things. All the information and messaging that's relevant to them, product requirements, specifications, no buzzwords, no jargon, access to information they can share with all their stakeholders in the deal. And some people and some participants in this research said, well, I want a self-serve sandbox or demo that I actually do myself, and then I'll go talk to sales. So if you understand all these things, you can start to see how you start to build out a go-to-market and the sales and all your sales and marketing activities. And without information, you're sort of just guessing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not surprised that so many. I'm not surprised about this research that they expected self-serve demo, and so many companies to just ignore that, because a lot of buyers, they expect that they just need time. They simply just need time to digest that, not just being served and then just pushed, to that decision.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, objections, right? So when I talk to clients, I really want to understand, okay, what concerns do you have when now you moved from a short list and you're evaluating the short list? It's higher intent. You're having demo meetings. You're talking to a sales team. What red flags come up? What concerns do you have? Where did we get it wrong? What did we do well, right? Is there anything that they want to really understand at that point in the process? And for some people, it is, we want to understand, we want a really good sense of how onboarding works. We want a full accounting of what the cost structure is going to be, not just the sticker price, but like, are there additional costs, right? You want to understand why maybe you're losing deals. And these are some of the things that I've seen in other research and other clients, right? They thought that maybe the price was too high, or the product isn't considered enterprise ready, but maybe it is, and you just haven't communicated that well, right? In all your marketing and sales. So if you understand the objections, you can put those in your CRM. You can actually put those in your marketing, and you can understand how you can actually still progress deals. Because they're out having conversations that don't involve you with all the stakeholders, and you want to understand what they're talking about and where their concerns are and why.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so how we can accelerate the sales with that insight, yes? So again, these are going to be just examples for illustration. But the first thing that I want to talk again is about the buying behavior triggers and events that you can automate tracking of. So the first thing to remind is you need to know the triggers and events that are happening in your target market based on buyer research that are worth tracking, because you can track the long list of events and combination of events, but they might not even matter for your specific target market. So if you are tracking them, one way to track is Feedly. So I've been using Feedly for the last 5 years, and just recently they introduced these amazing market intel AI models where you can track very specific companies' strategic moves. If you know those strategic moves' importance as triggers in buying behavior, then you can track them on Feedly and then integrate that strategic moves insights into your CRM. So Feedly can act as a trigger for events in your CRM that you then can proactively start working on. I have implemented market intel AI models for very complex companies selling pharmaceutical solutions or selling biotechnology research from the US to EU companies. And we looked at very specific strategic moves. So they have done the buyer research. We looked at strategic moves. So then we combined them even with trends and market insights. And what we noticed is that it increased productivity of the sales team. One thing that happened is that the company noticed that they don't need so many sales reps, because what they were doing is they doing really targeted actions towards their market instead of just blindly shooting, arrows and just doing, things that doesn't matter. So make sure that you do the buyer research first and then think about scoping your team. I think that one of the things that we didn't, address and we didn't talk about is that if you do the buyer research, your actions are more intentional, you are more
Absolutely.
productive, and you don't need such a big team.
Yeah, there's a lot of triggers, right, that can exist. I have a client now where moving from on-prem software storage to cloud storage is a catalyst, but like you still have to understand the contextual reasons why that business is doing that in the first place, right? Because they're not all going to be a fit. So you still need those understandings to influence the deals, and you can have the trigger, which is good. It's a good flag to start with, but then why is that happening in the first place?
Yes, exactly. Because, a lot of companies are hunting for that big addressable target market, but they forget about reachable target market at the specific moment, at the specific season.
Yeah.
So they always, they think that if they have 50 sales reps, that means that they have bigger target market, even though they have the same addressable target
Yeah,
market. And that is
absolutely.
definitely determined by those, strategic moves that are happening, and if they really matter in the buying decisions. That again can only Ryan's research tell you.
Or the
So
research
it's,
they
it's
do, right? Not just my research.
come on, Ryan.
Yeah. Well,
you
thank you.
are you are the genius here. I mean, the research needs to be done by someone who really cares to
Yeah,
dig
I
deep
agree with you.
enough. So that's
Absolutely.
what we mean. Okay, so let's talk about another element in the buying behavior, about the content. So this is a big shift, but it's still buying behavior. What I see companies are missing is how valuable are content formats across the buying journey. And of course, we see webinars are important, case studies are important, but not a lot of companies notice the fluctuations of content formats consumption across the buying process stages, early,
Mhm.
mid, or late. For me personally, a big surprise was when looking at this research that late stage late stage podcast is more important than a white paper. For me, it was a surprise. Again, this is generalized research. If Ryan would dig deeper into your specific addressable target market by research, he might find it different. But there are always surprises. That's what I want to say, that you need to even know what kind of formats you should be providing for your B2B decision makers at specific stages. Because again, the podcasts, the webinars, the white papers, they might be found at different stages, and you need to know what to add into your digital sales room, as I showed previously, depending on what is the stage in their buying process. Now we are approaching the final stage of the decision making. So, as I mentioned previously, we are looking today at four angles, which is champion psychology, technographics, buying behavior, and decision making. We will talk now about evaluation, roles, and internal influencers.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the people involved in a deal and
Yeah.
what is happening, what are the angles, what interesting things we can see.
Yeah. We talked a lot about champions, and they're always the best place to start in any size of company. As deals get more complex as companies move up market, which is usually a path for many companies. They want to move up market, however they define that. So there's often more people involved in a deal, but the champion is always your best start, right? Because they give you the most insights into everyone that's involved, whether there's other
Yeah.
users, how legal's involved, finance, maybe they need some type of executive sign off, what have you, right? Um, but they give you, at least champions will at least give you your first good look into that. Here's the thing, though, you still want to understand all this because you want to understand what information you need. Here's from one of my projects where there's a software company, they worked in the media space, and the users of the software were never involved in deals at all, right? They actually were kept at arm's length in majority of the sample sizes. Whether you agree with that, you think that's good or not, it's up for debate, but that's what was happening.
Yeah.
So you have to understand, okay, if all the users are going to see this software for the first time after that it's been acquired, how does our onboarding look like? What do they need to be successful so that we don't see churn, right? What do the buyers need to see? They need to see stories of successful implementation in users that's low friction, and how we're facilitating that, right? So there's all these things that you sort of need to understand about who's involved. What do legal need to see? What are their contractual requirements? What does finance need, right? You need, and again, you can get a good first pass from your champions, but if you start getting to larger deal sizes that are more complex, you might want to go and start talking to these other people that are involved to get more specific insights into how they're involved in the deal.
Because especially I think that if it's a really big deal and 7 or even 10 people are involved from different departments, even their language, champion might not be even
Exactly.
aware of the concept that they are using because it's completely, champion could be from IT team and suddenly legal team are using these very different concepts
Yeah.
that, are
Yeah. A
completely
big one
different.
now
Might,
is
yeah,
security and trust teams looking at compliance
yeah.
regulations. Do you fall within line?
Oh,
Where does
those are
data
big.
stored?
Yeah.
Right. So those are evolved. That's really evolved in the last 5 years, where that type of role is influencing deals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those guys can really kill your deals really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do they
Yeah.
need? What do they need and why?
Oh my God, yeah. It's very hard to get what they need, and that's why we need investigative research. Because just recently, I heard a story from my client, and it was the medical devices company in the USA, and it was all about the security, and they didn't do that research at all, and they really struggled. I mean, they had amazing product, technology is just great, but they forgot just one aspect to look at because they started that 8 years back, and as you mentioned, in the last 5 years we're seeing more and more these departments influencing these decisions. So that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So as you mentioned, if we are talking specifically about technology buying committee roles, this is again very general research, but only 44% are technology focused roles. So it means that the remaining guys, they might not understand the language that you're using when you are trying to sell technology. Not just language, but the use, the daily life of that technology, the changes that it might bring, the needs, the additional needs that that technology might impose on their daily lives. So there's so many things that you need to make sure that you have, just because the people that you're selling to might not understand so much that you expect. It's just to use that cold logic that if the company is buying technology, I expect to talk to someone who really understands technology. That's almost never the case. And that's very, very important to understand when it comes to building content. Content for non-technology focused roles, and just try to explain them how your product works in a very, very simplistic language. So again, as we see, buying committees can be very complex. We have so many stakeholders in different roles. And one of the ways how to include them and to track their involvement in the deal is the digital sales room. That's why here in this sort of case study that I created as a digital sales room, I added these sections for IT team and for legal team. This can be added, you can add 5, 10, 20 more of them. But let's say if someone lands from the legal team, they just go here, they click here, they find the documents required for them that you added, and everyone is aligned. Again, you can track it. Then you see, oh, okay, so legal team is really looking at us. It means that we might be somewhere in a good place with this deal. So then your assumptions are at least somewhat right. Not just sending billion emails to to different teams. You are all on the same page. So this is just an example how to be aligned. That's again very, very important. Now, what I want to really state at the end, what is your job today as a seller if the buying process has such a bad reputation? In the initial slides, we saw when 77% of buyers say that's completely hard. They are suffering. It's so hard to buy the solution for a company. It means that you as a seller have a bad reputation, isn't it? So the first thing is you need to do research. That's the pillar. You need to find someone who really can do research for you. You need to understand buyer behavior clearly, analyze those insights. So Ryan provides those insights. He doesn't just do the research, he provides you those insights. Using those insights, you can provide support for a champion. So selling is providing support for the champion. Another level is provide support for champion seeking to support his or her buying committee. Yes, provide direct support for the decision makers, as I showed, like legal or IT team, educate them, and get tools that enable that support. Okay, get the tools that you know will enable that support. Because if you're supportive for your buyers, that will transform your reputation as a company. They will come back to you. They will definitely recommend you because they will tell their colleague or someone from another company, their friend, or in a professional association, they will tell, oh, these guys were very supportive. It was so easy to understand what they're selling. And it didn't take us 6 months to buy that service. So make sure that you get the tools that enable that support. And you will be the champion of your champion in the buying committee. So you're exactly. So our goal is to make sure that you look like a champion in that buying committee. So that is sort of the critical idea. Would you like to add anything, Ryan?
No, I think that's great. I mean, I don't want people to feel overwhelmed because we threw a lot at them, right? And it
Yeah,
can be
yeah,
very
yeah, exactly.
overwhelming to see all this stuff. So I always just tell people it's just tackle it parts at a time. Start small, keep it simple, keep it focused on
Yeah,
small part, just one section of the buying journey that maybe you want to focus on improving. And you'll find that as you do more of it, the incremental, it's incrementally getting better as you tackle parts of it.
exactly. It's all about the intent
Yeah,
and that understanding that you're shifting to understanding that you need to support your buyers. I love
absolutely.
that. Okay, so how to work with us? Yes, so we started this amazing partnership, and so of course it's very easy, to contact both of us on LinkedIn. Ryan was on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, I'm on it too much, but
But
I'm there.
so the first thing that you can do is you can book a discovery meeting with us. You will see that link in the event description on LinkedIn. You will see that on YouTube. You can also scan this QR code. It will all start, with a mutual action plan. So it doesn't matter if you want to do just buyer research or if you want to just go straight for the tools or start with buyer research and then tax configuration. We will make sure to help you understand what would be the best step for you. And all the process will take around 3-4 months, I think. Again, it depends on the buyer research scope that you're doing. So if you would like to add anything about the buyer research and usually how long it takes, Ryan, please.
Yeah, no, it's all relative to how to getting people. So that's actually one of the more challenging, longer parts of the process. Sometimes it can be days, sometimes it can be weeks, and there's a lot of criteria around that. But I often say plan. You want to plan at least plan a quarter for the research and worst case scenario, but hopefully we can get it done in about a month or two.
Yeah, exactly. The same with text stack configuration, depends on your team and depends, how many people you want to train, because I also do training. What I would do is I would take that buyer research, I will look at the insights, I suggest text stack, then we would look at the best options, and then I would configure them based on your strategy and the buyer research. Then we would, of course, need to train your team and onboard them to use those tools. So it can take anything from 1 month to 3 months to fully onboard everyone. And then it's launch.
Yeah.
Launch to the
Exciting.
stars. So it's easy to work with us. Just contact us. I really hope that you got a lot of value out of it. If you have any questions, you can always contact us. I'm not sure if so. Should we wait for questions?
Yeah, I know if anyone
Because
has.
now,
Yeah,
yeah,
anyone can drop in the chat now. I've been sort of looking. Most people just asking, introducing themselves, and asking if it's going to be available after, which
yeah.
is pretty much normal. Um, but I think we've covered
Okay.
a lot of ground. So I think if anyone has any
Yeah.
questions, they can either drop it in the chat here. Or I'm always happy to reach out. I respond to every direct message I get on LinkedIn. Always happy to try and help. So please don't be shy, anyone, to reach out and just ask me the odd question. Always happy to see if I can help.
The same. I always, check my LinkedIn daily. I check, my YouTube channel. I am also available on Twitter as we're streaming now. And you can always, reach out to me. So I have open profile on LinkedIn, no problem to DM me. Make sure you do that. And again, I hope that you got a lot of value out of this. And that was great. So thank you, everyone
Yeah, thanks everybody.
who is watching, and thank you, Ryan.
Hey, no, thank
That's
you.
it
Thanks for having me.
for today. That's it for today. And so I hope that you guys will have a great day. And as I said, reach out. Always can answer the questions that you have, and hopefully we will have, uh, cracking revenue code 2.0. So
Yeah, that'd be fun.
so follow us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's it for today. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.